Okay, the reading for this week is the next part in our series on Chinese civilization and culture. And again, these worksheets that I'm using, these PDF files are available online. I'll put the link to that in the description below. They were compiled by somebody at Columbia University, and they're based mostly off of the Sources of Chinese Tradition, Columbia University Press, 1999. I'll put the information or the link to that book below so you can buy the book and read the essays in full. The essays that I'm reading here are mostly just excerpts that are included in the worksheets. All right, today's reading is The Memorial on the Bone of the Buddha by Han Yu. This is a Tang Dynasty, late Tang Dynasty essay. Han Yu, born in 768, died in 824, was orphaned at a young age and was largely self-taught through his own diligent study. Passing the examinations, he served 4 Tang Dynasty emperors. An outspoken official, Han Yu was committed to the strengthening of the central government, which had been weakened by regional military strongmen. So this is after the Shang rebellion, you'll remember, which took place, I think, 755 or around there. Han Yu advocated unity and strong imperial rule in his writings and participated in military action against regional strongmen. He was also outspoken on other matters that were important to him. He was exiled to the extreme south of the Tang Empire for submitting the following memorial to his ruler, the Shanzong Emperor, in 819. Okay, so this essay that I'm about to read got him banished from the center of the empire to the far south. Let's see. Let me read the study questions before we read the full essay. Okay, so as always, there's an abridged version and there's the longer version. I will read the longer version here after we go over the study questions. Study question number 1. On what grounds does Han Yu criticize Buddhism? Okay, and in this class, keep in mind that we'll be reading several critiques of famous critiques of Buddhism, and they're all coming at Buddhism from slightly different angles. So we'll want to compare those later on. So the first question, on what grounds does Han Yu criticize Buddhism? Are his arguments rational and valid? Question 2. If you were a Chinese Buddhist of the Tang period, how would you counter Han Yu's arguments? Question 3. If you were not a Buddhist, but nonetheless disagreed with Han Yu, how would you counter his arguments? So how can you counter Han Yu's arguments from both a Buddhist perspective and a non-Buddhist perspective? Are those final 2 questions. Questions 4, 5, and 6. Question 4. What assumptions does Han Yu make about his ruler, the Shanzong Emperor, and his religious beliefs? Why does he make those assumptions? Question 5. What assumptions does Han Yu make about the common people? Are his assumptions about the common people valid? Are they supported by Confucian philosophy? And the final question, 6. What practical effects does Han Yu think that the emperor's welcome of the bone of the Buddha will have? Do you think that his argument is valid? Why or why not? Okay, so those are the 6 questions that we'll discuss in class. Now let me read the longer version of the essay. Complete document. Okay, this is the complete document. This is the full essay right here. Your servant begs leave to say, well, let me see the title again. Memorial on the Bone of the Buddha by Han Yu. Your servant begs leave to say that Buddhism is no more than a cult of the barbarian peoples, which spread to China in the time of the latter Han. Okay, so remember that Buddhism came to China around the 1st century AD, so the latter Han, around 100 AD, I think, is the date that's usually given. Your servant begs leave to say that Buddhism is no more than a cult of the barbarian peoples, which spread to China in the time of the latter Han. It did not exist here in ancient times. When Emperor Gaozi, the first emperor of the Tang period, received the throne from the house of Sui, he deliberated upon the suppression of Buddhism. But at that time, the various officials, being of small worth and knowledge, were unable fully to comprehend the ways of the ancient kings and the exigencies of past and present, and so could not implement the wisdom of the emperor and rescue the age from corruption. Thus the matter came to naught, to your servant's constant regret. Now your majesty, wise in the arts of peace and war, unparalleled in divine glory from countless ages past, upon your accession prohibited men and women from taking Buddhist orders, and forbade the erection of temples and monasteries, and your servant believed that at your majesty's hand the will of Gaozi would be carried out. Even if the suppression of Buddhism should be as yet impossible, your servant hardly thought that your majesty would encourage it, and on the contrary cause it to spread. Yet now your servant hears that your majesty has ordered the community of monks to go to Fengxiang to greet the bone of Buddha, that your majesty will ascend a tower to watch it as it is brought into the palace, and that the various temples have been commanded to welcome and worship it in turn. Though your servant is abundantly ignorant, he understands that your majesty is not so misled by Buddhism as to honor it, thus in hopes of receiving some blessing or reward, but only that, the year being one of plenty and the people joyful, your majesty would accord with the hearts of the multitude in setting forth for the officials and citizens of the capital some curious show and toy for their amusement. But the common people are ignorant and dull, easily misled and hard to enlighten, and should they see their emperor do these things, they might say that your majesty was serving Buddhism with a true heart. The Son of Heaven is a great sage, they would cry, and yet he reverences and believes with all his heart. How should we, the common people, then begrudge our bodies and our lives? End quote. Or it's not really a quotation. He's imagining what the common people would say if they thought this. Then would they set out singeing their heads and scorching their fingers, binding together in groups of 10 and 100, doffing their common clothes and scattering their money from morning to evening, urging each other on lest one be slow, until old and young alike had abandoned their occupations to follow Buddhism. Then will our old ways be corrupted, our customs violated, and the tale will spread to make us the mockery of the world. This is no trifling matter. Okay, keep in mind that we see similar essays throughout Japanese history too, including those that appeared in the beginning of the Meiji period when Buddhism came under fire and they attacked it, the elites attacked it as a foreign ideology that was corrupting the native pure traditions of Japan. Continuing, now Buddha was a man of the barbarians who did not speak the language of China and wore clothes of a different fashion. So he's a foreigner, a dirty foreigner. The Buddha is Siddhartha. His sayings did not concern the ways of our ancient kings, nor did his manner of dress conform to their laws. He understood neither the duties that bind sovereign and subject, nor the affections of father and son. So filial piety the Buddha was not aware of, and he did not expound on this great virtue. He understood neither the duties that bind sovereign or subject, nor to father and son. If he were still alive today and came to our court by order of his ruler, your majesty might condescend to receive him, but he would then be escorted to the borders of the state, dismissed, and not allowed to delude the masses. So Buddhism deludes the masses who are stupid and stubborn, he says. How then, when he has long been dead, could his rotten bones, the foul and unlucky remains of his body, be rightly admitted to the palace? Confucius said, respect spiritual beings while keeping at a distance from them. Okay, so Confucius was famously skeptical of gurus and spiritual leaders and religions, sort of although Confucius has its own metaphysical principles and so forth, so it's entirely anti-religious. Nevertheless, he said, respect the spiritual beings, but keep distance from them. So when the princes of ancient times went to pay their condolences at a funeral within the state, they sent exorcists in advance with peach wands to drive out evil, and only then would they advance. Now without reason your majesty has caused this loathsome thing to be brought in and would personally go to view it. No exorcists have been sent ahead, no peach wands employed, the host of officials have not spoken out against this wrong, and the censors have failed to note its impropriety. Your servant is deeply shamed and begs that this bone be given to the proper authorities to be cast into fire and water, that this evil may be rooted out, the world freed from its error, and later generations spare this delusion. Then may all men know how the acts of their wise sovereign transcend the commonplace 1,000-fold. Would this not be glorious? Would it not be joyful? Should the Buddha indeed have supernatural power to send down curses and calamities, may they fall only upon the person of your servant, who calls upon high heaven to witness that he does not regret his words. With all gratitude and sincerity, your servant presents this memorial for consideration, being filled with respect and awe. Okay. All right, we'll go over those 6 questions about this essay in detail in class. See you then. Bye.